There's something about the woods at night, a stillness too perfect, a darkness too deep. It's where the world forgets itself, where headlights can't quite reach, and even your own voice feels like it's echoing from someone else's mouth. This wasn't supposed to be a scary story. It was just a date, a soft Friday night, sometime in October. Too warm for a jacket, too cold for open windows. He picked her up just after 8, hair combed back, that nervous smile boys wear when they want to seem older than they are. She wore lip gloss that smelled like cherries and carried a folded note in her pocket, the one she left behind for her mom, just in case. They were both 16, old enough to sneak out, young enough to still believe they were safe. They drove past the edge of town, past the gas station, past the last streetlight, until it was just them and the sound of gravel under the tires. They parked beneath a cluster of pines that swayed like they were whispering to each other. A lover's lane, they called it. The kind of place where nothing bad was supposed to happen, until it did. The dashboard light glowed dimly. The car ticked softly as it cooled, and for a little while, they forgot about the world outside. They were laughing, talking about music, college dreams, holding hands, and then the radio cut out, a burst of static, followed by a voice, flat, mechanical, almost bored. Police are warning residents in the area of an escaped patient from the state hospital, last seen near Rocute 9. He is considered armed and dangerous. The man is missing his right hand, and in its place is a hook. The boy reached for the dial, muttering something about prank broadcasts, but she wasn't listening, because outside the car, somewhere beyond the trees, something was moving. His name was David, hers was Karen. He worked weekends at a service station just off the highway, wore oil on his fingers like it was cologne. She was all soft perfume and Sunday manners, the kind of girl who said maybe when she meant yes, and I'm fine when she was anything but. This was only their third date. The first two had been safe, daylight, coffee shops, friends nearby. But this one was different. The kind of night teenagers dream about, where rules bend, where silence becomes a language. David turned down the radio, letting the soft hum of the engine fade. He looked at her, not just at her, but through her, trying to read her mind the way boys do when they're scared of asking the real question out loud. She smiled, but it was small, the kind of smile people wear when they want to believe they're okay, but aren't. Outside, the woods pressed in like a closing hand. The trees swayed without wind. The shadows leaned closer than they should have. "It's quiet," she whispered. "That's the point," he said. "Too quiet," she replied. And then the silence cracked. A sharp pop from the radio, then static, then that voice again, faint, distant, like it was leaking through from somewhere else. Patient last seen wearing a hospital gown, missing one hand, replaced with a sharpened steel hook. David laughed nervously, shaking his head. "It's a joke. They do this every Halloween." But Karen wasn't smiling anymore. Her fingers tightened in her lap. "Did you lock the doors?" she asked. "Yeah, I think so." "You think so?" The wind picked up. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe it was just the sound of leaves brushing against metal, or maybe something else was brushing. Pause. Slow breath in. David leaned toward her. His hand brushed her knee. She pulled away just slightly. The moment, the one they'd both been building toward all night, slipped between them like smoke. He tried to recover. A grin, a dumb joke, but before he could say anything, tap. A soft knock on the rear window, just once. Light, but sharp. Like the tip of a metal hook, they both froze, didn't move, didn't breathe. David whipped around in his seat. Nothing, just the darkness, just the woods, just shadows where shapes should be. Probably a tree branch, he whispered. There aren't any trees that close, she replied. Another tap, louder this time. And closer. Karen gasped, hand flying to her mouth. David reached under his seat, fumbling, found the tire iron, gripped it too tightly. Stay here, he said. Don't go out there, she pleaded. If it's just some kids messing around, I'm going to scare the hell out of them. And if it's not? He didn't answer, just looked at her for a moment longer than he should have, then opened the driver's side door. Creak! The cold rushed in, and David stepped out into the dark. David disappeared into the dark like a match dropped in water. Karen sat alone in the passenger seat, the interior light above her casting a sickly glow across the dashboard. The door creaked shut behind him, and the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was charged, like the air just before a storm. She could barely see him now, just a vague outline, barely illuminated by the red glow of the taillights. His silhouette was swallowed quickly by the night, the pines behind him too tall, too dense, and far too quiet. She wrapped her arms around herself, tried not to breathe too loud, tried to keep her eyes fixed on the window, but every reflection made her flinch. The woods no longer looked like trees. They looked like shapes, watching, waiting. Then came the first sound, a tap, sharp, clean, not from behind this time, but from the side window, the 1 inches from her face. She gasped and spun her head toward it. Nothing, just fogged up glass, just the reflection of her own terrified eyes. And behind them, movement, a faint shimmer, like something had just stepped back into the blackness, like something had been right there. Her voice trembled. David? No answer. She leaned forward, scanning the woods through the windshield. Still no sign of him. Only the faint rustling of leaves, too steady to be the wind, too slow to be squirrels. Then she heard the door handle. Click, click. Someone, or something, was trying to open the passenger door. Her blood turned to ice. She pressed her back into the opposite door, heartbeat hammering in her ears. She could barely think, could barely breathe. Then, footsteps, fast ones, crunching through leaves. David appeared at the driver's side, breathless, wild-eyed. He flung the door open and threw himself in, locking everything with one fast slam of his hand. His chest heaved, his skin was pale, his voice was thin. We need to go. Karen's voice was barely a whisper. What did you see? David shook his head, staring out the windshield like he expected something to rise from the shadows. I don't know, he said. I thought I saw someone standing between the trees. Karen turned her head slowly toward the tree line, but the fog was thicker now. She couldn't see a thing. What do you mean standing? She asked. David didn't answer. He gripped the steering wheel and turned the key. The engine coughed, then died. He tried again and again. Nothing. The car made that sick clicking sound, the one you never want to hear when you're stuck in the middle of nowhere. Karen's fingers reached for the glove compartment, her mind racing for options. David stopped her. Don't open it. Why not? Just don't. She stared at him. He looked different. Not just afraid, not just shaken. Something else, something deeper. Like he'd seen something he couldn't explain. Like something had followed him back. Then they heard it. Not a knock this time, not a sound sharp and sudden, a scrape, metal on metal, dragging. It circled the car, slow, deliberate, like a hook being dragged across the paint. Karen covered her mouth with both hands to keep from screaming. The sound was too close, too real. It moved from the back across the side toward her door. She couldn't see anything, but she could feel it, like pressure in her ears, like something ancient had risen up from the dirt just for them. David held the tire iron like a lifeline, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror, then the driver's side mirror, then the windshield. But there was nothing. The sound stopped. And in its place, a silence so heavy, so unnatural, it felt like the world had stopped breathing. No wind, no crickets, no footsteps, nothing. It was as if the night itself was waiting. Karen's voice was barely audible. "David, what was that?" He didn't answer, because whatever it was still out there. And now it knew they were in here. The silence stretched on until it felt like a noose tightening around their throats. Karen didn't move. David didn't blink. Something was out there, and it wasn't leaving. His hand trembled as he turned the key again. This time, the engine sputtered, coughed, then roared to life. Relief flooded the car like oxygen. David threw it into reverse, gravel kicking up behind them as the tires spun and caught traction. The car jerked back, then forward, headlights slicing through the fog like twin blades. Karen's hands were shaking in her lap, but she didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just stared straight ahead, eyes wide and unblinking. "Are we okay?" she asked finally, her voice hollow. David nodded too quickly. "We're fine. We're out. It's gone." But neither of them looked back. The road felt longer on the way out. The trees seemed to press in tighter, leaning toward the car like they were trying to listen. The fog didn't lift. It thickened, dragging its ghostly fingers across the windshield as they sped through it. Only when they hit pavement again did David ease off the gas. Karen exhaled like she hadn't been breathing for miles. She looked at him. He was trying to act calm, one hand on the wheel, eyes on the road. But his jaw was tight, his knuckles white. There was something under the surface, something he wasn't saying. "I told you I saw someone," he said suddenly, "by the trees, when I got out." She turned toward him, waiting. They were tall, standing just inside the tree line, like they'd been watching us the whole time. But when I stepped toward them, he swallowed. They didn't run. They didn't even move. Karen's skin prickled. What did they look like? I couldn't see their face. They were wearing something dark, a long coat, or I don't know. He paused. "I swear to God, I saw metal, like a hook." Karen stared down at her hands. Neither of them spoke for the rest of the drive. They reached her neighborhood just after midnight. The street lights were dim, casting orange halos onto the wet pavement. Her house was quiet. No lights on, no movement inside. David pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. "You okay to go in?" he asked. She nodded, though her limbs still felt hollow. "Yeah, I'll call you tomorrow." She opened the door and screamed. David jumped out and ran around the car. There, hanging from the passenger side door handle, was a hook, old, rusted, jagged. The tip stained dark, too dark to be mud. It swung lightly in the breeze, clinking softly against the car door, as if whoever had been holding it had let go at the last possible second. The hook was still swinging when the police arrived. Karen stood on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the driveway like she wasn't entirely sure she was awake. Her parents were inside, making panicked phone calls. David sat on the curb, hands buried in his hair, refusing to speak. The sirens had already come and gone, but the silence they left behind felt heavier than before. Two officers in pressed uniforms stood over the hook like it might come alive. One of them reached into his pocket, pulled out a pen, and carefully lifted it from the door handle. The blood at the tip was still wet, no fingerprints, no tracks, no name, just a jagged piece of rusted steel, curved and sharpened and cold to the touch. The officer holding it glanced back at Karen. "You're lucky," he said. She didn't answer. Later that night, in the back seat of the squad car, one of the younger cops leaned toward the other and muttered something he thought no one would hear. "I've seen this before. Same kind of weapon, same road." The older officer didn't respond. He just kept driving, faster than he needed to. At the station, a file was pulled from a drawer no one used anymore. The paper was yellowed, smelled like mildew. The date on the front, October 1952. Inside, a hospital intake form, a patient, name redacted, male, age 29, diagnosis, severe schizophrenia, violent tendencies, distinguishing feature, missing right hand, fitted with a custom-made steel prosthetic. Last seen, Route 9, escaped, never recovered. The case had been closed, not solved, just buried. Too many missing pieces, too many frightened families, too much pressure to move on. For years, the story passed between teenagers like a dare. Don't go to the woods. Don't park on that road. Don't listen to the radio when it starts to static. And above all, don't ignore the knocking. They called it a legend, a warning, a campfire tale for high schoolers with bad intentions. But someone had written it first. Someone had filed the report. Someone had found that hook once before. David didn't go home that night. He drove until sunrise. Karen didn't sleep. She sat on the floor of her room, staring at the wall until the birds began to sing again. Neither of them returned to that road, not ever. The story spread fast. By Monday, kids at school were already whispering about the hook. Some said Karen had made it up. Others said David had planted it as a prank. But the look in their eyes said something else. They believed, they just didn't want to admit it. By Friday, local police had released a vague statement. No signs of forced entry, no suspects, case closed. But in a small town, things never really close. They just sink deeper, like bones in soft dirt. 2 weeks later, a retired nurse from the nearby psychiatric hospital came forward, quietly, anonymously. She wouldn't give her name, but she left a letter in the department mailbox. No return address. It read, "In 1952, we had a patient who escaped. He had a steel prosthetic. His hand was lost in an accident." What kind? They never told us. He was quiet, but he had episodes. Nights where he'd scream about voices in the woods, about people who watched him from the trees. Then one morning, he was just gone. We searched for days, found his gown near the river, but not him. They told us to stop talking about it, said it would cause panic. We were ordered to burn the files, but I never did. I kept one, and now I know he came back. Police dismissed the letter. No name, no evidence, no follow-up. But a journalist from the State Gazette picked up the trail. She traced it back to a story buried in microfilm. 1933, Texarkana. 2 teens found dead in a parked car, slashed open by something jagged. The girl was missing her hand. The boy's body had been dragged into the woods. The killer was never caught. Locals called it the Phantom. But in a later version of the article, one that never made it to press, a deputy reportedly found something caught in the door handle, a piece of fabric and a streak of rust. In the decades that followed, the legend took on a life of its own. The Hookman, they called him, a faceless killer of the backwoods, a ghost who hunted teenagers too bold to stay home. The story morphed, became a parable, a cautionary tale. Parents used it to scare their kids. Movies turned it into gore. Halloween masks were sold at roadside stands. But underneath the myth, there was always something real. Because fear doesn't appear out of nowhere. It grows from something buried, something forgotten, something never explained. Karen never spoke about that night again. David moved away the following spring. They lost touch. But every now and then, someone would park too far down the road. The radio would flicker, and someone would go missing, just for a little while, then return, silent, shaking, and swearing they heard someone knocking. Some stories don't end, they just stop being told. The road is still there, the trees still stand, and on quiet nights, if you drive far enough, past the gas station, past the last street light, you'll find it. The turnoff, the grove, the clearing. It looks like nothing, but you'll know when you're there because everything will go quiet. No crickets, no wind, no sound at all. And maybe, just maybe, your radio will start to flicker. Static will rise, and a voice will come through. Escape patient, missing hand, hook in its place. You'll laugh. Tell yourself it's a prank, just like David did, just like Karen did. But when you reach for your door, if your fingers tremble, if your breath catches, if the hairs on your arms lift for no reason, get back in the car. Don't look out the window. And whatever you do, don't open the door. Because some stories aren't made up. They're warnings. And some things that go missing in the woods don't stay gone. Soft breath, fading, he never left. He's still knocking.